Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this press conference by President Schulz. We will have an introductory comment by President Schulz in English, and then he'll be ready to take your question. Due to interpretation issue, we will only have English, and the President will then take your question also if you need in German and French. Mr. President,
thank you very much. And thank you very much for changing the places, because here I have a better overview than there. Yeah, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. As Mr. Fassina said, I want to introduce shortly in English, and I'm available also to answer two questions in French and in German. The summit is for sure one of the most important ones. It is obvious that after the decision of the United Kingdom to leave from the European Union, the 27 member states must decide what they want to do. And one thing is clear, and is now really the key question: which kind of European Union we want? The European Union is as strong as the member states allow it. The European institutions, the Parliament and the Commission, are part of that union. They are instruments of the union, but the union itself is created by the member states. It is not the European Union in Brussels which has founded the Federal Republic of Germany, or invented Italy, or created France, or Slovakia. It is the other way around. The member states built the union. And therefore the member states have to take the responsibility for the union they have created. And my feeling after my talks here is that an increasing number of prime ministers and presidents understands it, that they have to recognize their responsibility for the union. And that union is built on two pillars. There is the kind of cooperation between sovereign states, what we call intergovernmental cooperation, and there is the cooperation of countries who have transferred sovereignty from the national level to a transnational level with own instruments, own organs. This is European integration. And to play, as some tried it in the last years, one pillar against the other, or to have a profit in the pillar of integration, but then to tell that everything, to the public, everything happens on the level of sovereignty, or to vote, a unanimity vote in the council and to return at home and to blame the vote to which you have contributed with your vote as a prime minister, as a minister, as a wrong one, and as a kind of imposed will from Brussels to the national sovereignty. This is detrimental for the European Union. Therefore, I expect that now, where it is about the future of the European Union, the Bratislava summit will show unity, or at least the will to come to more unity. And therefore an open dialogue is necessary, also an open dialogue about what is dividing us. I had a lot of bilateral meetings in the morning, therefore I'm relatively optimistic that there is really a possible positive outcome. And if there is a conclusion, yes, we stick together. We want to tackle the challenges of the 21st century: migration, tax evasion, fight against terrorism, border control, the investment and growth questions, the stabilization of our common currency. If there is a will, and a long list of other important items, is there is a will to start to deepen the cooperation by focusing on what is unifying us, instead to deepen every day what is dividing us, then we could step by step improve the situation of the European Union. I had a meeting with Prime Minister Orban in the morning, who is, I think, a little bit, no, not a little bit, who is representative for a complete other view to the European Union than my own view. And Prime Minister Orban just recently described Mr. Juncker, Mr. Verhofstadt and me as nihilists from the Brussels elites. It's for the first time in my life that I learned that I'm a part of an elite. Makes me happy. But that I'm a nihilist, I didn't know it. But I found it makes no sense to answer now in similar terms. And therefore I phoned him and I said to him, Prime Minister, is it not better to meet and to check if there are, despite these deep divergences we have, not things we think we have in common and we have to deepen in the interest of the Union and the citizens. And that was a very confrontative, open-minded, but at the end also a fruitful meeting, because I felt even with Viktor Orban that the will to come to common conclusions is there. And therefore, as I said at the beginning, I'm not super optimistic, but I'm not pessimistic, which is taking into account the situation perhaps already something. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now we take your question. If you can introduce yourself and your media before. We start with Georgi.
Thank you, Giacomo. President, you just said that it's possible, Georgi Goto from Euractiv. You said that it's better to attempt on deepening on what is uniting us instead of trying to deepen on what is dividing the Union. In that sense, I mean, the Commission proposal for mandatory quotas, which obviously is dividing, it means that you support those who say, let's abandon this because it doesn't work. I mean, how many relocations have taken place? Let's face it, let's be serious about it. So by saying this sentence, you basically agree to those who say, let's find another way and let's abandon this relocation, which is dividing. This is my question.
I think that's a point which will be discussed intensively and was already during the last days intensively discussed. I had, for example, an exchange with Prime Minister Orban on that question. And what happened on the basis of all the decisions on the initiative of the Commission about the different measures in the whole package of the management of the refugee problem happened in the frame of the Lisbon Treaty. Commission takes an initiative, sends it to the Parliament and to the Council, and then is decided in the Council with qualified majority. This is not, as it is described from time to time, an illegal measure. It happened in the frame of the European rules. But we see, on the other hand, that despite the correct legal way, it doesn't function. What I expect is that those who say this is wrong make own proposals. My feeling is they are on the way to make such own proposals. Yesterday, a meeting with Prime Minister Fico, who reported from the Visegrad discussions, and all these proposals are welcome. And I belong to those who say if a mandatory solution doesn't function, but we get a voluntary one which is effective, then it is in the interest of the refugees that we find perhaps a combination between both. That on the basis of the mandatory rules, nevertheless, voluntary measures are possible. This is perhaps not what we call in German die reine Lehre, the pure application of the rules, but it is effective. And taking into account the difficult situation of a lot of refugees, I want to be effective.
Thank you very much. Matthew Holhouse from MLEX Market Insight. I wondered if I could ask you about the Brexit process. Clearly, Brexit's going to be a a situation laced with economic risk, chiefly for the United Kingdom, but not exclusively to the European economies as well. Can I ask you, in your opinion, what degree of economic risk do you think European voters are willing to tolerate in potential lost investment, in potential lost jobs, in trade between the United Kingdom and the rest of the European Union? What degree of risk do you think European voters are willing to tolerate during this process? And what sort of pressure do you think that will put, if any, on the leaders as they go through this process?
This is a very hypothetical question, because I would prefer to answer to that question if Article 50 of the treaty would already have been triggered. Then we could go into the details and see who has the losses and the damages and who is at risk, which kind of economic sector has most damages in the United Kingdom and in the European Union on both sides, but it is the United Kingdom government which is not triggering Article 50. Therefore, I'm unable to answer to you, and I don't want to speculate. I would prefer to have a concrete frame to answer. Secondly, look, the United Kingdom is a G7 country. This is a veto power of the Security Council, the second economy in the single market. That such a country leaves the European Union is weakening the European Union, that's for sure. But why is the United Kingdom a G7 country? Why it is the second economy in Europe with the unlimited access to the single market? And they cut it now. This is a lose-lose situation for both sides. Therefore, I'm of the opinion that once they have triggered Article 50, we should avoid damages for both sides. And I'm strongly advocating a fair deal, but one thing is also clear, nobody is prepared to put in doubt the fundamental principles of the European Union and the four freedoms.
Thank you. James Mates from ITV News. Mr. President, the holding of the first summit without the UK for 43 years, your appointment of a hardline negotiator from the European Parliament, what message are you trying to send to London about how these negotiations are going to play out when they eventually start?
A hardline negotiator. Guy Verhofstadt was appointed by the Conference of the Group Chairman of the European Parliament. Conference of Presidents is the title of that organ, as the coordinator of the activities of the European Parliament until Article 50 is triggered. So he can't negotiate. He is not a hard, tough negotiator, because we would be happy if he could negotiate. But it's a pity he can't, because Article 50 is, as I just said, not triggered. And I think I will meet Prime Minister May next week. Guy Verhofstadt belongs to those in the European Parliament who stick to what I just said to the previous, in answering to your colleague. We have fundamental principles for the single market. We have fundamental principles for the free movement of goods, services, capital, and people. And I think we should not make a hierarchy where people are less important than goods, trade goods, capitals, and products. And therefore, you will find in the European Parliament never a majority to put in doubt the equality of these four freedoms. If we can agree about that principle, with or without a hard, tough negotiator, we will find an agreement. But if you put in doubt that principle, that will be very difficult.
We'll take a question from ARD.
Markus Preis, ARD, German TV. Mr. Orban and Mr. Kaczynski recently announced that there should be a cultural counter-revolution in the European Union. From your talks, do you have any sense what this might be? And second, if everybody takes each other seriously, has it any chance to change the character of the European Union? Thank you.
First of all, I'm a little bit surprised that the German television puts the question in English, but it's also symbolic. Therefore, I answer in German and in English. I asked him what is a cultural counter-revolution, but we had not enough time to explain. I think he needs a lot of time to explain what is a cultural counter-revolution. But that the line of Mr. Kaczynski and the line of Mr. Orban, for example, has an impact on the development within the European Union, that's obvious. The question is, which kind of impact? We must, people like me, for example, I'm a left-wing politician in the European Union with a very internationalist approach. I think that transnational democracy, that means transnational democracies belongs for me to the biggest, even a historical achievement of the second half of the 20th century. As a German, post-war born in Western Germany, I think that the idea that countries and nations across borders cooperate in common institutions as a frame to find always a fair deal on equal footing between the heterogeneous interests. That not the big ones give lessons to the smaller ones, as it was in the first half of the 20th century, is for me a historical achievement. And I think those who put this in doubt are playing with stability. Therefore, I disagree entirely with this renationalization strategy, which is, in my eyes, a way to give answers to the challenges of the 21st century with proposals of the 19th. This is wrong, but it is existing and the tracking voters, and therefore we have to discuss with them. And my meeting with Viktor Orban was an offer. Let's discuss what's your way, what's our way, because we can't allow that they exclusively claim to represent the people. I represent the people as well. But in a transnational democracy, in the logic of what I just said, countries and nations across borders have to cooperate, but then they have also to dialogue. And if in one country, one ideological line prevails, in another one, we must find a way of dialogue and to find compromises. And that's exactly what we have to do. And I think it is possible. And therefore we should avoid such provocation like nihilists or cultural counter-revolution. To find a way of mutual respect, also of different opinions, is still what I think what we need to do. Vielleicht eine deutsche Bemerkung dazu. Ich habe Herrn Orban gesagt, ich glaube nicht, dass es sinnvoll ist, in so angespannten Zeiten, wo es wirklich für viele Menschen in Europa auch um ihre soziale Existenz geht, ideologische Debatten, Grundsatzdebatten zu führen. Es geht auch darum, dass die Europäische Union ein Instrument ist. Ein Instrument, in dem Staaten und Völker über Grenzen hinweg einen Rahmen finden, um ihre sehr unterschiedlichen Interessen miteinander auszugleichen. Das geht aber nur im Weg des Dialogs und nicht im Weg der Konfrontation. Und als nachkriegsgeborener Westdeutscher weiß ich eins: Diese Idee, dass Staaten und Nationen über Grenzen hinweg kooperieren, in Organen, die sie sich geben, um ihre unterschiedlichen Interessen auszugleichen, wo nicht die Großen den Kleinen Lektionen erteilen, ist in meinen Augen eine historische Errungenschaft der zweiten Hälfte des 20. Jahrhunderts, die wir im 21. Jahrhundert nicht aufs Spiel setzen dürfen. Deshalb ist der Dialog, auch mit unterschiedlichen ideologischen Auffassungen, ein Kernstück europäischer Politik und politischer Notwendigkeiten in Europa.
Thank you. I'm János Kárpáti, Hungarian radio station Klub Radio, still on Mr. Orban. He recently, a few days ago in Hungarian parliament, spoke about your intention to include left-leaning cities into resettlement of refugees. If countries cannot be convinced, leftist cities will be convinced. Mr. Orban interpreted your supposed position. I would like to ask what it was discussed at this meeting and with what results. Thank you.
Yeah, I spoke with him about that in the morning, and I was surprised. He quoted an interview I gave in a German newspaper. We will check it once more. But he made a reference to my visit in Szeged last year. And I met the mayor of Szeged last year, that's true. And I told to him, listen, Prime Minister, I met him after I had visited one of the most wonderful synagogues in Europe, in Szeged. And in the city hall, I listened to Hungarian folk songs. Wonderful, by the way. But we didn't speak about left-wing mayors' network inspired by Martin Schulz to trigger refugees to Hungary. So I can clarify this. But he said, but you gave an interview. And we check it in the German newspaper. I can't remember that I inspired to build a Europe-wide network of left-wing mayors to trigger and to attract refugees, bypassing national governments. This is, and if it is a translation question, I confirm here, as I confirmed to him, this is not my intention.
Thank you, Mr. President. Further down at the back.
Jörg Münchenberg vom Deutschlandfunk auf Deutsch, wenn Sie erlauben. Herr Schulz, Sie haben vorhin auch die Bedeutung der Nationalstaaten so hervorgehoben, jetzt in dieser Orientierungsphase. Was heißt das denn für die Rolle des Parlaments oder auch der Kommission jetzt in den nächsten Monaten? Spielen die faktisch überhaupt keine Rolle mehr in dieser Orientierungsphase?
Na, ganz im Gegenteil. Ich bin auch dankbar für die Frage, weil ich es damit noch einmal präzisieren kann. Das Europäische Parlament und die Kommission sind Organe der Gemeinschaft, die im Rahmen des Gemeinschaftsrechts ihre Aufgaben als Gesetzgeber und als Exekutive und als Gesetzesinitiator, was die Kommission ja mit ihrem Initiativmonopol ist, wahrzunehmen haben. Was nicht geht, ist, dass die Mitgliedstaaten der Europäischen Gemeinschaft verlangen, dass wir dies tun. Und wenn wir es nicht in ihrem Sinne tun, anschließend hingehen und sagen, die haben gar kein Recht, das zu tun. Das ist eine Einmischung in innerstaatliche Angelegenheiten. Deshalb nochmal, die Union wird ja nicht von der Kommission gegründet und vom Parlament gebildet, sondern es ist genau umgekehrt. Und die Mitgliedstaaten müssen sich schon entscheiden, was sie wollen. Wollen sie eine starke Europäische Union oder eine schwache? Und die Stärke der Europäischen Union oder ihre Schwäche hängt vom Willen der Mitgliedstaaten ab, die diese Union bilden. Es gab einmal eine Zeit, da gab es jede Menge Regierungschefs in Europa, die gingen zu einer Ratssitzung mit dem Satz, ich bin hier, weil eine starke Europäische Union im besten Interesse meines Landes ist. Heute haben wir eine Menge von Regierungschefs, die kommen und sagen, also ich gucke mal, wie weit ich hier mit meinen Vorstellungen komme und wenn das nicht funktioniert, ist es die EU schuld. Das funktioniert zu Hause immer. Wir müssen wieder zum ersten Fall zurückkehren, weil ich glaube zum Beispiel, dass die weltweiten Handelsbeziehungen, wenn ich mal dieses Beispiel nehme, mit Regionen in der Welt, nehmen wir mal mit China, die andere Sozial- und Umweltstandards haben als die Europäische Union, andere ökologische Standards, andere Arbeitsstandards, andere Normen auf Dauer im Wettbewerb schwierig wird, wenn Deutschland oder Luxemburg oder Finnland oder die Slowakei alleine diesen Wettbewerb bestehen sollen. Dazu wird man schon eine starke Europäische Union brauchen, die dann am Ende übrigens auch unsere sozialen, ökologischen und demokratischen Standards als Union für jedes einzelne Land verteidigt. Deshalb, die Mitgliedstaaten müssen sich entscheiden. Die Union ist so stark, wie sie es wollen. Die Union ist nicht so stark, wie das Europaparlament es beschließt oder die Kommission es vorschlägt. Und deshalb, wir müssen alle unsere Verantwortung übernehmen. Wir, unsere im Rahmen des Gemeinschaftsrechts, die Mitgliedstaaten für die Union als Ganzes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Down there on the left.
My name is Rostislav Hochin. I'm from Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. Mr. President, early October has been mentioned as a possible date for voting in the European Parliament on visa liberalization regime with Ukraine. What kind of outcome do you expect? And because Ukraine is saying that it has fulfilled all criteria, and when at last Ukraine could get, and Georgia, could get a visa-free travel regime with the European Union? Thank you.
In the relevant committee of the Parliament, Georgia was voted, I think, last week. In the Civil Liberties Committee, we had a vote about Georgia last week in favor, and I hope that, as far as I have have it in mind, the 29th of September, the relevant committee will vote about Ukraine, so that in the October session, perhaps we could put it on the agenda of the Parliament. But I think the vote in the committee will happen on 29th of September. If the criteria are fulfilled. As far as I'm informed, the rapporteur, Ms. Gabriel, will propose a positive vote.
Thank you. We have Euronews.
Sándor Zsíros, Euronews. Mr. President, the Brexit referendum caused a shock in the European Union. Do you think that the Hungarian quota referendum will have a similar effect, and after that the European Union can maybe change the direction of the migration discussion? Do you see any chance for this?
This is a Hungarian decision, a sovereign decision of the Hungarian voters. As I said in answering to the first question, the refugee problems will not disappear with a referendum or with a relocation settlement agreement or whatever of the European Union. It is there. Refugees are coming, they are fleeing, and we have to tackle that challenge. And all proposals to solve it are welcome. Therefore, I don't believe that a referendum will change the problem. It is perhaps a support for a certain position of the Hungarian government or not, we will see. But they change not the need to tackle the migration problems.
SIR News Agency.
Yes, Giovanni Del Re from the Italian newspaper Avvenire. President, we were saying that Europe will be as strong as the member states want. I have a question on President Tusk, because there were some criticism on his letter of invitation when he says the Commission should not expect to impose own views on the member states. I wanted to ask you what you make out of it, and do you have the impression that Mr. Tusk is on a different line of thought than you and President Juncker are, that he's following a much more intergovernmental line rather than the community method? Thank you very much.
Yeah, I read carefully that letter. I read also carefully very much commentaries on the letter. I had a chance to discuss it with Donald Tusk and Jean-Claude Juncker yesterday, and the outcome of our meeting yesterday was that we agree about more or less everything. So my impression that he is on another line than Jean-Claude Juncker and me, my answer is clearly no. In the letter, I had slightly a different, I read it also very carefully, but I had slightly a different interpretation. I think he is also on the line to remind the member states to their responsibility for the European Union. And that on which is concerning the refugee problems, he was always reluctant on which concerns the mandatory rules is well known. I think this is not new. And I think this is also his good right to have to be of that opinion, as other members of the Council are of that opinion. And I want to repeat, Jean-Claude Juncker and we had, I don't know how much times discussion about that. And in his speech in the State of the Union, Juncker said, if mandatory rules are not leading to solutions, then voluntary initiatives. The situation in which we are is those who propose mandatory rules are criticized that this is not functioning. And those who criticize it make no own proposals. But now, obviously, they are moving to make own proposals. And I find this is already a step forward. That's what makes me optimistic, that we will see perhaps some developments that both sides will approach. And this is necessary to help the refugees.
Thank you. Here on the right.
Thank you. Andrej Matušek, Slovakia, Devi Pravda. 2 questions, if I may. One is, we are talking about somehow of a start of the Bratislava process here. Also, Slovak Prime Minister said that a couple of times. So, what would you like to see at the end of the process? Anything, maybe something concrete you have in mind? And second question, what's your view on this buzzword, defense and security? We are talking a lot about strengthening the common security, common defense. So how do you see it, maybe also amid fears of having President Trump in the US? Thank you.
Yeah. These are 3 questions. I'm afraid I can't answer to a question what will be at the end of the so-called Bratislava process if I have not yet a concrete result of that meeting here. If there will be a Bratislava process, I heard that Robert Fico used that term. I would be happy if it goes in the direction of more unity and strengthening cooperation between the countries and strengthening of the institutions to apply and to fulfill what the member states and the citizens in the European Union expect from the Union. And therefore, the process should lead to more unity and less division. Second, we should take into account that there is a certain tendency also in the United States or in the United States of America that guarantee of European security is not always only and exclusively a United States item, that the Europeans should also look to their own responsibility. One may like it or not, but that's a reality. And that leads logically to a debate about in-depth security cooperation in the European Union. The German-French initiative goes in that direction. But if you look to the 27, you have member states of NATO. You have member states who are not in NATO. Between the member states of NATO, you have different opinions about the role of NATO. So to get to develop a common security strategy, which is in my eyes necessary, even unavoidable, taking into account the international situation, it is a good project because this is only possible in unifying the member states and to focus on common goals. Therefore, the proposal is going in the right direction, but it's still a long way to go. And on which is concerning Mr. Trump, I think it's not surprising that the German Social Democrat feels very near to the Democratic Party in the United States, and the candidate of the Democratic Party in the United States, Hillary Clinton. I know her very well personally, and I think not a surprise for you that the opinions Donald Trump represents are for sure not my opinion.
Thank you. We take 2 more questions, one down there, and then Griselda.
Mr. President, you have personally one of the longest experience of the Parliament, of the European Union Parliament. A very simple question that you know very well, but with a new meaning now, obviously. As you said, this is a special historic moment. Whatever happens, there might be an agreement or not, and whatever one, at any case, the European Union Parliament will have, you know very well, the responsibility to speak on behalf of the European Union citizens, and they will have an important role at any case in the foreseeable future. Do you think that new ways, or old ways, but efficient ways at any case, in order to associate in one way or another, with all imaginative possibilities, the European Union citizens before the decisions will be taken or during the debates, do you think it would be something good to do in order to really come closer to the citizens? Not just the slogan that we all say, but really to try to do it now. Thank you, sir. Sorry to raise an old question, but in new circumstances.
as much as possible, citizens can influence directly political decision making as better it is. My experience as a former mayor of a small German city is as near a decision making happens to the citizens as high as the acceptance, as far away as lower the understanding and the support. Therefore, to integrate as much as possible citizens in the process of decision making as better it is. But we are not a federal state, the European Union, in which a referendum, a binding one, for example, could lead to a common decision. We are a union of sovereign states. And if a referendum in one state blocks everything in all the other countries, this is for sure not meaningful. Therefore, I'm of the opinion that we have to include as much as possible the citizens, but if your question goes in that direction for more referendums, I'm very reluctant.
The lady, yeah.
Nachrichtensender. Herr Präsident, meine Frage ist, wir waren gerade oben, fast jeder, der Ministerpräsident kam und sprachen von der Zukunft der Europäischen Union. Es geht heute um die Zukunft. Ist die Situation jetzt so schlecht? Welche Rolle soll die Europäische Union jetzt haben im Syrienkrieg? Und was muss Europa machen im Kampf gegen IS?
Ich glaube, dass mit Federica Mogherini am Verhandlungstisch über Syrien die Europäische Union in Form einer gemeinsamen Diplomatie mitarbeitet, die erfolgreich ist. Wenn die 27 Mitglieder der Europäischen Union, jetzt noch 28, sich auf eine gemeinsame Linie in der internationalen Politik einigen, können sie Enormes erreichen. Ich gebe Ihnen mal ein Beispiel. Die Tatsache, dass der Iran nicht nuklear aufrüstet, ist ein Resultat einer beständigen Verhandlungsstrategie der Europäischen Union und hat am Ende zum ersten Mal seit langer Zeit zu einem Abkommen geführt, an dem die EU beteiligt war, Deutschland, Frankreich, Großbritannien und die Vereinigten Staaten von Amerika und Russland haben dieses Abkommen geschlossen. Das heißt, hier ist ein sehr breites Spektrum an beteiligten Kräften vereinigt worden. Und damit ist meiner Meinung nach ein großes Stück mehr Sicherheit erreicht worden. Wenn wir in Syrien mit dem Beitrag der Europäischen Union einen ähnlichen Prozess erreichen könnten bei den Gesprächen in Genf, wäre das schon sicher, was die EU angeht, ein großer Fortschritt. Ich bin da sehr optimistisch, dass Federica Mogherini da eine sehr, sehr gute Rolle spielt und spielen kann. Was den Kampf gegen die IS angeht, gibt es zwei Dinge. Wir müssen unter allen Umständen die Mittel und Wege dieses sogenannten Islamischen Staates, sich Geld und Waffen zu beschaffen, unterbrechen. Ich glaube, das ist in der internationalen Sicherheitsstrategie extrem wichtig. Zweitens, wir brauchen ganz sicher auch eine Strategie, wir brauchen nicht ganz sicher, wir müssen eine sehr viel intensivere Strategie gegen die Radikalisierung junger Menschen, vor allen Dingen bei uns in Europa, entwickeln und auch den Versuch unternehmen, bereits radikalisierte junge Leute wieder zurückzugewinnen. Eins ist völlig klar, das muss man auch noch mal hinsichtlich dieses von einigen politischen Kräften ja auch gewünschten Zivilisationskampfes, wir gegen den Islam, das erlebe ich im Europaparlament jeden Tag. Ich hatte vor ein paar Tagen tatsächlich einen Abgeordneten im Europaparlament, der sich zur Geschäftsordnung gemeldet hat und gesagt hat, heute ist der 333. Jahrestag des Sieges über die Türken vor Wien. Ist das nicht ein Festtag? Der österreichische Abgeordnete im Europaparlament, fand ich schon bemerkenswert. Und diese Leute, die uns da auf diesen Zivilisationskampf zutreiben wollen, denen muss man ja auch noch mal sagen, dass viele der Attentäter aus unseren eigenen Ländern kommen, bei uns aufgewachsen sind, in Syrien sicher zum Teil radikalisiert und ausgebildet worden sind, wieder zurückgeschickt worden sind. Deshalb der Kampf gegen den IS ist eben auch ein Kampf um die Herzen und die Köpfe junger Menschen bei uns und sicher auch ein Kampf gegen das, was die wollen. Der IS hat eine Strategie, moderate Muslime durch eine Verelendungsstrategie zu radikalisieren. Das konnte ich mir sehr gut in Tunesien anschauen, in Sousse, wo die Lebensader einer ganzen Region, der Tourismus, vernichtet werden soll, indem da am Strand Menschen erschossen werden. Und Tunesien, eine aufgeklärte, säkulare, muslimische Gesellschaft, verletzt werden soll. Die Menschen dort wehren sich gegen den IS und brauchen unsere Unterstützung. Das sind unsere Verbündeten. Und auf der anderen Seite eben der IS braucht die Radikalisierung hier, auf der vor allen Dingen extrem rechten Seite, weil diese Radikalisierung wiederum ihm, dem IS, die Rechtfertigung für seine Radikalisierung gibt. Radikale brauchen Radikale. Und deshalb ist der Weg, den wir gehen müssen, ganz sicher auch, dass wir keine Pauschalisierung in der Beurteilung von politischen Bewegungen oder Menschen vornehmen dürfen.
Dernière question, Griselda Pastor, Cadena Ser.
Merci, Griselda Pastor, Cadena Ser. Je pose ma question en français. Après toute une année de blocage aujourd'hui, et ça n'a rien à voir avec l'endroit, mais on a un peu le sentiment que la vieille Europe passe les clés de la voiture à la nouvelle Europe. Moi, j'aimerais savoir si, pas personnellement, mais comme représentant d'une institution comme le Parlement européen, vous n'avez pas le sentiment d'avoir perdu une bataille. Et j'aimerais savoir aussi si vous avez demandé à M. Tusk de venir face au Parlement, expliquer le contenu de sa lettre, et spécialement si dans cette réunion d'aujourd'hui, le gouvernement soutient ce contenu.
3 questions. Premièrement, non. Je n'ai pas le sentiment d'avoir perdu une bataille. Nous sommes dans un processus turbulent comme président du Parlement européen avec mes collègues au Parlement, l'écrasante majorité des députés au Parlement européen. Nous sommes en train de discuter, de réfléchir et d'agir pour stabiliser l'Union européenne. Deuxième réponse, Donald Tusk va présenter son debriefing et son présentation de la ligne avant les prochains conseils européens au Parlement européen. J'en suis sûr, il peut là, dans le cadre du débat, aussi justifier cette lettre ou d'autres observations, communications qu'il fait publiquement. Je l'ai discuté ça avec lui hier. Et 3, non, je ne crois pas que les États membres vont continuer comme ils ont fait. Si ce que le collègue de l'agence slovaque a posé comme question, s'il y aura ce que Robert Fico a considéré comme un processus de Bratislava, et ça commence aujourd'hui, j'en suis absolument sûr que en cas de succès, c'est la reconnaissance de la responsabilité des États membres pour leur union. C'est le partage de responsabilité. Tout ce qui va bien est national. Ce qui ne fonctionne pas, c'est l'Europe. Ça, c'est au détriment de leur propre union. Et mon sentiment, mon expérience même pendant les dernières semaines est plus en plus les gouvernements dans les capitales respectives des États membres le comprennent.
Thank you very much for your attention. The press conference is over.